right, hello ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. It's time for our lesson 7.3. It is time for the review question. So in the review question, we're going to go over things that we learned in lesson 2. In lesson 2, we talked about how Alfred Weber had a least cost theory about industrial location. So basically, what's the theory about where factories are going to locate? All right, so today's review question reviews that information. Today's review question is, which of the following industries would locate near the raw materials? Okay, so today's question for review is, which of the following industries would locate near the raw materials? The answer choices for the review question are A, soda bottling, B, milk bottling, C, copper smelting, D, baking, or E, car manufacturing. Okay, so the choices for this review question, the answer choices are A, soda bottling, B, milk bottling, C, copper smelting, D, baking, or E, car manufacturing. Okay, the first word in lesson 3 is mini mills for steel. So in the last lesson, we talked about how historically steel mills were located near their inputs because the inputs were big, heavy rocks from the earth. Today, they've changed what they make steel out of, so that's also changed the location of the steel mills. Okay, so what has changed is that the input is different. It's no longer those big, heavy rocks like the coal and the iron ore. Today, what they use as the input for steel is scrap metal. So now that we know that steel is now made from scrap metal, a different resource than in the past, you can probably guess that no longer do they have steel mills in Pennsylvania and in the Ruhr Valley in Germany, which I think I told you last time, right? Those were historical examples. So no more steel mills in Pennsylvania or in Germany. And of course that does something to the economy in those places as well. So that's something to keep in mind that we'll talk about in future lessons. All right, so now scrap metal is the input for steel, which is widely available. So because of that, they have changed to having the factories located near the people to minimize their transportation costs, instead of having what was called these integrated mills, where they would have had to process all of their heavy rocks and things like that in the past. So you no longer have to locate near those big heavy things. Instead, you can locate near the people and bring in the pieces of scrap metal and make steel in smaller bunches. Something really important to keep in mind is that this change in the production of steel doesn't just change steel in America or in Germany, it changes the whole worldwide production of steel. Okay, because before, steel was made in developed countries because that is where the raw materials were located, and you had to have those raw materials or you couldn't make steel, right? So in the past, up until the year 1980, 81% of steel was made in developed countries, because they had the raw materials that were necessary to make this steel. Okay, so 81% of steel used to be made in developed countries until 1980. Oh, and today we have a new cat visitor. This is Skittles. Skittles, say hello to the camera. Yay! So because it's changed and we now use a different input, we use scrap metal, that means that the factories are going to be located near the people. So because there's more people in developing countries, especially in Asia, you probably remember that 2 billion people live in just China and India combined, right? Actually, it's more than 2 billion people. So that means that the production of steel has shifted. It's no longer in the developed countries, it's now in the developing countries. So the stat is that since 2013, 71% of steel is now made in developing countries. So this has a big impact on the global economy, right? And the other day we talked about the newly industrialized countries, the NICs that don't really fit in this category of developed or developing. So some economists made this separate category for them. This would be an example. If these countries start having the steel production of the mini mills, then that's why they're becoming newly industrialized countries. Okay, so mini mills means that the shift of steel production has gone to the developing world, where because 71% of it now is made in the developing world and not in the developed. Okay, that's an important thing to keep in mind. Word number 2 is about modes of transportation for goods. Right, so this fits in the whole picture of this lesson because word number 1 in lesson 2 was situation factors for determining your factory, right? And we talked all about Alfred Weber's least cost theory, which is all about transportation. So now we need to understand the different costs that are associated with the different modes of transportation. Okay, so now we're gonna look at the pros and cons and the costs of the 4 major modes of transportation for transporting goods. Okay, something important to keep in mind is that we are transporting things and not people. Okay, so right now when we're talking about the pros and cons, we are discussing about things that are moving around the world and not people. Because I know you're all gonna be thinking the airplane is the best, right? And I agree with you. I love planes. Planes are great. They help you get anywhere in just less than half a day, right? Maybe not Australia. It might take a while to get to Australia. It's probably over 12 hours. I've never flown there. If you have, you can let me know. Okay, so you're gonna think planes are the best way of transportation because they're the fastest, but they're the fastest for people, okay? So we're gonna see that planes are not the best actually for transporting goods. They're maybe actually the worst. When we're talking about modes of transportation for goods, we're gonna look at 4 things. First, trucks, then trains, then ships, then airplanes. All right, so 4 things: trucks, trains, ships, and airplanes. Something first to say about all of these things is that they're definitely integrated. Maybe you've seen shipping containers going around when you're driving on the highway, or when you're up in a plane and you drive over an airport, or maybe you're driving close to an actual seaport on that plane and you might see these brightly colored shipping containers everywhere. I don't know, I remember like a lot of times I've seen them, they're like blue or orange. Probably has to do with the company that owns them. So, but anyway, what they've really done is they've streamlined it, and you can package all the goods into those shipping containers, and the shipping containers don't have to change. You don't have to unload them all the time. You can take that entire container and you can take it from a ship, and then you can put that same container onto a train, and then you can put that same container from the train now into a truck and have that truck, that semi-truck, take it across the country. Okay, so everything is really integrated by using the shipping containers. All right, so first up is transporting things by truck, and we mean semi-truck, not your favorite Chevy or Ford that you have in your front yard. Okay, so semi-trucks. All right, so good things about semi-trucks. Semi-trucks have a high route flexibility, right? They could go lots of places. There are a lot of roads, especially in America. So if there was something blocking one of the routes, or there was like a traffic accident, or a road is closed, or there's road construction, it's okay. The truck driver can get on his GPS and he can find a new way, and those goods can still get there on time. All right, so a really good thing about trucks is high route flexibility. Okay, so we said that trucks are good because they have high route flexibility. Okay, trucks are also most often used for short deliveries or short distance deliveries because they can be loaded and unloaded quickly. Okay, so things about trucks is that they have high route flexibility and they can be loaded and unloaded quickly, right? And they're used for short distances. The next type of transportation we're going to look at is the train. All right, so the train is used for long distances, and that is because you don't need to pay a truck driver to stay overnight if you're using a train, because trains can continue overnight across the entire country, and you don't have to incur additional costs with that. Okay, so trains are going to be used like if you had to transport something across our entire country, or across the entire thing of Europe, or the entire thing of Europe and Asia. All right, so trucks were good for short distances and trains are good for long distances. Okay, another reason you want to use trains for long distance is because they have higher terminal costs than trucks do. So because you have to load the shipping containers onto the trains, and you have to use these shipping containers when you're going to be using the trains, you're going to have to pay more for big cranes and other things logistically to move the containers around. So there's a higher cost of loading and unloading things onto trains. And so because you have to pay that cost, you want to make up for it by being able to transport that thing on the train for a really long time. Okay, so trains are better for longer distances because you don't have to pay the truck drivers overnight to sleep. And they're also better because you have a higher cost of loading and unloading, and you want to be able to minimize that by spreading it out for a really long time and not always loading and reloading, because if you're loading and reloading, you're going to pay more money all the time. Right, next up is ships. So ships are pretty necessary for the world's goods, and I think we've said this before that almost everything is going to be put on a boat that comes to us because our things are made all around the world, right? So if trucks were used for short distances, trains are maybe used for across our entire country, and then obviously ships are used for things that need to come from other continents. The major bonus of a ship is that it can go on the ocean, and the other two previously mentioned things can't. So if you wanted to get a good from Asia, you would need to put it on a boat. Especially, remember, we're talking about these shipping containers, right? So again, you're going to say, wait a minute, plane is better. You can't put these huge shipping containers onto a plane. So you need to put them on a ship. And also, remember, there's a lot of high cost associated with loading and unloading the shipping containers. But if you're taking it all the way across the ocean and then unloading it, then it's worth the price of loading it onto the ship because you've made up for it. The container has been on the ship for a huge distance, all the way across the Pacific Ocean, for example. All right, then last is the airplane. All right, so the airplane is our least used mode of transport for goods. This is because it's the most expensive. The fuel for airplanes is really expensive, and you can't fit that much stuff on the planes. So you can't have these huge containers that work on the other three that are interchangeable on the other three. You can't put those onto the planes. So you could unload them and take pieces, packages and things that you have in those containers and reload them onto the plane, right? But that's going to be expensive again. So you can't put the whole shipping container onto the plane. So planes can only take a little at a time. All right, so because the planes can't carry a lot, because the fuel is expensive, because you have to pay people to load and unload things, planes are the least used, and they're only going to be used for the delivery of small things and things that are of incredibly high value. So you probably noticed before when you were going to buy something online and then pay for the shipping, right? And it asks you, how much do you want to pay for shipping? And it all depends on how quickly you want to get it. If you don't care how long it takes, then you pay the cheapest price. And then it's coming to you by boat from a different continent, right? And then probably also by truck too. So definitely don't think in your mind that these things are completely separate. Most likely, everything that you order from a different continent is going to be, first on a boat, then maybe even on a train, and then on a truck, right? So it could be on all of these things, or maybe it could have gone on a ship first, and then it went on a truck, and then it went on to an airplane, and then went on to a truck again, right? So back and forth, all of these things being mixed together. It's just up to the company to decide all the time where they want to locate so they can minimize these costs the best. Plane's the worst because it's expensive, and so you're going to put only little items on it. All right, so when you go to pay for the things that you just bought online and you pay for the shipping, if you want it slow, that's fine. You won't pay very much. It'll probably come from a boat. But if you want it fast and you're buying something small, then you could pay a lot and you could get overnight shipping, right? Of course, Amazon has definitely taken advantage of this, and they just have you pay a flat fee up front, and they give you everything in 2 days. But we digress. So they do that because they have massive warehouses all over the place, and they keep their things in stock so they can quickly get it to you all the time. I don't think it's because they're flying everything around in planes. The plane is going to get you the fastest, but you, the customer, are going to pay more in the shipping fee so that the company doesn't lose a ton of money by putting everything onto the plane. All right, the last word number 3 for today's lesson is break of bulk point. Okay, so I was just explaining to you that most likely whatever you buy has come here by various transportation modes, right? And so there needs to be a spot where you can switch. So the break of bulk point is the point where those shipping containers come in and they can be offloaded from one kind of transportation to a different kind of transportation, okay? Or maybe not with the containers, because remember, airplanes generally don't use those. So just any place where you're going to be taking the goods from the first mode of transportation, switching it, and putting it onto a new mode of transportation. Okay, that's a break of bulk point. All right, so break of bulk points are going to be seaports and airports, the place where you can make possible the transfer of goods from one mode of transportation to another. Seaports and airports. So one time I was flying into Newark, New Jersey, and as I was coming close for the landing, you could easily see a break of bulk point underneath the plane. It had all of these shipping containers, so I'm going to look for a picture of that to help you know and visualize what a break of bulk point looks like. All right, so the break of bulk point is going to be the place where you're going to take it off the ship and you're going to put it onto the truck, or you're going to take it off the ship and put it onto the train. The Port of Miami is a great example of a break of bulk point. If you've ever driven to Miami Beach, you've passed the place where they have all the cruise ships, but then once you're also on that same road past all the cruise ships, you're going to see all of the cranes that are used to offload the shipping containers from the boats that are coming in there, and then those things are going to be put on semi-trucks and then taken to their next destination. Okay, so a great example of a break of bulk point is the seaport that we have right in our own town of Miami, where the shipping containers come in from all over the world. All right, so now it's time to look at the review question that we made in the first part of the video. All right, the question was, which of the following industries would most likely locate near the raw materials? All right, so raw materials is the key there. Okay, so our choices were soda bottling, milk bottling, copper smelting, baking, or car manufacturing. And hopefully you figured it out that the answer is copper smelting, choice C, because that is the thing that would be the weight losing industry, right? Copper smelting is going to have big, huge, heavy inputs, and it needs to be refined and melted down to something else. All of the other choices are weight gaining industries, right? Soda bottling gains weight by adding the bottles. So does milk. Also, milk is perishable, so it needs to be near the market. Baking is perishable, so it needs to be near the market. And we learned that car manufacturing is weight gaining because the pieces all get assembled into a car. Okay, so the answer was C, copper smelting. That's the only thing of the choices that loses weight in the process. All the other 4 things gain weight in the process. All right, I hope that you've enjoyed lesson number 3 from my mother's dining room in Pennsylvania. And yeah, there was only one cat interruption. I thought that their dog would bark. He didn't. I don't know what he's doing. Camille didn't want to make appearance. Sorry guys, you just get to see Skittles today. All right, see you next time. Bye. Delete. Okay, another reason you... Oopsies. And they're also better because you have a higher cost of